I had a kind of a rough day today. Sometimes the stresses of the world just, pile up and you just feel trapped. You realize we're looking at a second wave of a pandemic. More and more people are getting sick, and despite all of that, we still have a surprisingly large number of complete, total fucking morons who are so selfish and self-involved that they can't be bothered to go and get a free vaccine because some orange hobgoblin told them that this is how the Democrats destroy America. You put onto that the fact that I'm employed with an organization that has repeatedly made it clear that they don't care if me and my colleagues live or die. And you go even deeper into that, and that I have had a continuous invasion of my space where I work by loud, obnoxious jackasses that refuse to leave my area because it has been made painfully clear to me again and again and again that what I do simply does not matter enough to move them. So you pile all that on, little annoyances, rent being higher than it should be, things of that nature, and you just suddenly feel like you've just got this volcano of rage you are sitting on top of, and you have nowhere to direct it, and then suddenly you remember there's a G.I. Joe movie playing at the Galleria that is about to get a whole load of review unloaded on its ass. Yes. To answer the age-old question of why would you go see a G.I. Joe movie, here's the reason. I need a punching bag, and it's a defenseless target. So, let's discuss. First of all, the question that rang in my ears the whole time is, where in the fuck did this movie come from, and why was it made? I think that's a more interesting question than is it good or not. Of course it's not good. It's a fucking G.I. Joe movie. These movies are so bland and forgettable. I'll wager most of you forgot there even were two other G.I. Joe movies. At least the Transformers films had the good sense to be terrible on such a profound level that they have achieved a kind of Ed Woodian cult status for just how bad they are. And do you know why that is? Because Michael Bay actually is much more intelligent than I think we give him credit for. I'm not saying he's a good filmmaker. He's certainly not. But I think he is brilliant in marketing. I think that he actually made some brilliant moves with his Transformers and Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle films, even though you could easily replicate the feeling of watching both by simultaneously setting fire to everything you ever loved as a child, whilst also scraping your eyes and genitals with sandpaper. And yet, they made 6 of the fucking things because he knew people hated them. And every time he came out with one and they hated it, he fucking doubled down on the next one. Because he knew it was going to get initial big box office, and then it was going to have this afterlife on the internet where every critic of the time was going to spend hours ripping the films apart and explaining why they sucked. The nostalgia critics, cinema sins, Lindsay Ellis used them as a complete video essay to explain film and feminist theory. And yet these G.I. Joe films completely leave our minds because they're not ambitious enough to even be horrible, to be offensive. They're just bad and bland and a fucking waste of everything. I don't think this is a surprise to anybody. So here we have another one. This one a prequel / soft reboot. Again, they're probably banking that nobody remembers the other two G.I. Joe films anyway, so they're totally ditching what little continuity I can remember from those films, which, you know, who cares? And I guess they decided we still have this nostalgia property. 80s nostalgia is still a thing. It's still profitable. So let's do something with it. Let's put out another G.I. Joe movie. Better yet, let's make it about the one G.I. Joe character that everybody loved, the Boba Fett of G.I. Joe, Snake Eyes. Let's take the character whose entire thing is that you don't know shit about him save for the very, very basics, and let's give him an origin story, because that worked so well when Lucas did it in the prequels. Actually, you know what's funny? This is not the only the only comparison I can make to the Star Wars prequels with this Snake Eyes prequel. In that, the most interesting part of the movie is not the origin of Snake Eyes, but rather the origin of Storm Shadow, his arch nemesis. Just like in the prequels, while we were all supposed to care about the origin of Darth Vader, the far more interesting story in all three of those films was Palpatine, whatever, and the formation of the Empire. At least I thought so. I thought the little things he was doing behind the scenes to bring the Republic down and form the Empire was actually the most fascinating part of the films. And just like here, it is much more interesting to see Storm Shadow go from a semi-good guy to the villain. It's actually a fairly well done piece, but that's the bad guy. We're not supposed to want to watch him. We're there to see the origin of Snake Eyes. Now, before I get into ripping this film, I must say, giving the devil its due, going along with what I just said about Storm Shadow, there is actually some good ideas in this film. For instance, I liked that, at least, again, Snake Eyes being literally a blank slate in what little bit of G.I. Joe lore I am familiar with. I was not a G.I. Joe fan growing up. You know, I was a Transformers, Ninja Turtles, Power Rangers guy. G.I. Joe was never a thing, so I'm only aware of it kind of on the periphery. So if there are bigger fans out there and I'm stepping on things, you know, my apologies. But the way Snake Eyes was always portrayed in the cartoon was like a lot of the Joes. They were the uber good guys. They always did the right thing. They always made the right choice, and blah, 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 blah. I like that in this version, Snake Eyes is actually kind of a douchebag. And someone who makes a ton of mistakes and has to learn from said mistakes in order to grow and become the hero that he's always meant to be. I always like it when our wise mentor figures or our perfect heroes actually reveal themselves to be less than perfect. And that's why they're perfect now, because they learned from the mistakes of the past. I remember I really dug the last Harry Potter book because I really liked the reveal that Dumbledore toyed with the dark arts and toyed with the same philosophies that Voldemort played with, and that's why he fought against them so strongly, because he was there. He learned firsthand why it was wrong. So the idea of making Snake Eyes a douchebag who learns from his mistakes, first of all, gives a character arc, and two, it actually gives him a character. So I must give them credit and say that from that standpoint, it was a pretty smart idea. The problem is they did it a little too well and made him such a douchebag and such an ass that you didn't want to root for him. You didn't want him to succeed. You didn't want him to get away with it because he was being a douche nozzle and betraying everybody. You know? So they had a good plan. The problem is they did it too well. And Snake Eyes is not a compelling character. The idea is compelling, but the character is not compelling. The story isn't compelling. It's just fucking dull. Our Snake Eyes is played by one of the guys from Crazy Rich Asians. He was also in that last Christmas movie I reviewed a few years back. A decent to okay-ish actor, but, you know, again, we see very little of the good in Snake Eyes to make us want to root for him. And going, you know, the whole film is there to give an origin to somebody whose whole shtick is that he doesn't have an origin. And what origin did they pick? What did they come up with? Well, it's Inigo Montoya. He's after the guy that killed his father, and revenge is his all-driving motivation, and it causes him to be blind to friends and family and yada, yada, yada. It's the you killed my daddy. I mean, and they throw in a bunch of other stuff of you need to be pure of heart, and there's honor this, find your family. It's every Fast and Furious movie rewritten with a ninja film framing device. And what's even worse is the action scenes. The one thing that you should be able to rely on a G.I. Joe movie for. Balls to the wall, crazy action. And this time, no, we're doing it with ninjas, so you know there's going to be some kick-ass martial arts in there. Yeah, good luck seeing any of it. This is some of the worst cinematography for action scenes that I've ever seen. First of all, they're doing the shaky cam thing, which I fucking hate when they use it in fight scenes. I forget who was the first person to do it with that whole, it makes you feel like you're in the fight scene. Yeah, you know what it also does? It hides bad fight choreography by not letting the audience see any of it. The camera is so shaky, the movement's so blurry. Honest to God, there were moments where a character ended up on one end of the hallway or something, and then the next thing I know, he's flipped over the other end, and I have no idea how he got there. This is some of the worst fight. There's theoretically some interesting staging for these fight scenes, but you don't get to see any of it. What, you thought you were going to see some cool martial arts in a Snake Eyes movie? Well, are you ever in for a shock, buddy? You're living in a fool's paradise. So, it should come as no surprise this movie is terrible. It does not surprise me that this movie is terrible. Because that was a given. That's why I went and saw it. I needed to see a terrible movie to have something to point my rage at. And it's doing its job, so I give it all the credit in the world. No, the bigger question here is not, is this movie good? The bigger question here is, why was this movie made? Why was this movie made? Because there had to be a reason. As I mentioned, pardon me as I adjust this, as I mentioned, the other G.I. Joe movies are barely remembered. It's more of a, oh yeah, that thing existed. I don't think there are any fans of them. You never heard anybody, say, oh, I want more of this. So why now? Why all of a sudden? And it was one of those films that you didn't even hear anything about. I heard, oh, there's going to be a solo Snake Eyes movie. The next thing I knew, there was a trailer for it and it was being released. There was no build-up to this. It was just out. So why? Well, I'll tell you why. It is so obvious once you start looking at it. It is just one of those things that just clicks and you're just like, this could not be more obvious and more sad. This wants to be a Marvel movie. It is trying to beat Marvel to the punch. It was waiting. They were waiting to release this thing when Shang-Chi was getting ready to be released, because it is trying so hard to ape the press that film is going to get, being the first Asian-led superhero movie, big action film, big special martial arts movie. It wants to be Shang-Chi so bad. And this is, if direct-to-DVD things were still a thing, that's what this is. This is the cheaper, weaker, bootleg version of Shang-Chi. I haven't even seen Shang-Chi yet. It's not out yet. But I can guarantee you it is a superior movie to this. Guarantee you that you put these two films back to back and you can see the fucking fingerprints all over. They are trying to get the jump on and maybe fool some people into thinking this is going to be as good as a Marvel film. You want some extra proof of that? I'll give you some extra proof of that. Aside from the entire premise, the staging, the casting, I'll give you some more proof. Why the hell is the G.I. Joe character Scarlet in this movie? There is absolutely no reason for her to be in this movie. She is there for FaceTime solely. I'll tell you why. Because they are trying to make her the Black Widow. Her introduction in the film is a Black Widow moment. It's a cheaper, bootleg version of a Black Widow moment. Matter of fact, if I didn't know for an absolute fact that this character was actually created back in the 80s before Scarlett Johansson was even born, I bet, I would swear that the fact that they named her Scarlet was a fucking dig. They try everything. The actress who plays her, same actress from Ready or Not, who was good in that movie but has been shit in everything else I've seen her in, they shoot her and frame her face to look like Scarlett Johansson. Her costuming looks like Scarlett Johansson's from the various Marvel films. It could not be more obvious. They are trying to milk that comparison to Marvel films so much. It is the only thing I can think of to why this film just suddenly came out in between Black Widow and Shang-Chi. They had it in the can, I bet. They knew it wasn't going to be any good because none of the G.I. Joe movies are. They knew nobody was going to like it, but they said if we release it in between these much more popular movies from a good franchise, people are going to, try to see it. That was their only hope. And clearly it didn't work. It didn't work. They even do a mid-post-credit sequence because they seem to think they're going to get another sequel. I'm sorry, folks. I'm on record. The other film that this reminds me of, sadly, is X-Men Origins Wolverine, and I'm sure a lot of other people will make this comparison. See, I liked X-Men Origins Wolverine. I have mentioned this many times. I am willing to go to bat for that film and say I actually found it enjoyable and fun. Yes, it was bad, and yes, it was overblown, and yes, it wasn't anywhere near as good as it possibly could be. But you know what the difference is? The difference is in the star power. Hugh Jackman is a charisma machine. He has a natural likability that even in the worst X-Men movies. So it cut out a second ago, so I don't know if how far I got. But anyway, I was comparing this movie, G.I. Joe Origins, to X-Men Origins Wolverine, and saying that yes, while the X-Men Origins was a dumb movie, it was still fun. One, you could see the action, and two, Hugh Jackman is just a charisma machine. He's likable. He's a character you want to follow. Snake Eyes has none of that. It has nothing to build a brand on. It is just like the other G.I. Joe movies. It is trying to get by on nostalgia, and it doesn't even care enough to bastardize the nostalgia. It's a disappointing film from start to finish, and fucking has goddamn scenes with giant fucking snakes in it. Thanks for that nightmare fuel, you piece of shit. Oh, God. What a fucking mess. And it's exactly what I needed. Catharsis. That's what I call it. This is Catharsis the movie. So let's wrap this up. Let's wrap this up. So, final grade for Snake Eyes. I'm actually going to be generous. My gut is saying F. My gut is saying F all the way. But, no. You know what? Fuck that. Fuck all of that. Fuck that with a capital F. Fuck that with a capital F, boyo. Fuck it. This movie is a fucking F. Not just an F, a fucking F. I was about to go easy on it because I did like what they did with Storm Shadow. And I did think the creative choice of making Snake Eyes not a perfect character who had to learn and become a hero, I thought that was a good choice. But a couple of good choices and one well-done B-plot does not make up for the clusterfuck that was the rest of this shithole. I thank it for sucking, however. I needed the release. I needed the catharsis. So thank you, Snake Eyes G.I. Joe Origins, or is it G.I. Joe Origins Snake Eyes? Who fucking knows? Thank you for sucking so bad. It's exactly what I needed. So there you have it. I don't think this is news to anybody. It was a terrible fucking movie. So yeah. So there you have it. This is why I do these. This is why I do these. They are a Steam release when you need it. So thank you for listening to my therapy session. I hope you enjoyed listening to me vent. And yeah, hopefully the next thing we check out, I won't be in a bad mood and it will actually leave me in a good one. So here's hoping. So until next time, as always, drive safe, and I will see you at the movies.